The Business of Biotech is produced by Life Science Connect and its community of learning, solving, and sourcing resources for biopharma decision makers. If you're working on biologics process development and manufacturing challenges, you need to swing by bioprocessonline.com. If you're trying to stay ahead of the cell or gene therapy curve, visit cellandgene.com. When it's time to map out your clinical course, let clinicalleader.com help. And if optimizing outsourcing decisions is what you're after, check out outsourcepharma.com. We're Life Science Connect, and we're here to help. The Business of Biotech is not a sucker for a good DEI story. Let me explain that. I get the pitches pretty consistently. International Women's Day, Juneteenth, Women in STEM Day, Black History Month, Pride Month, and any number of other celebrations of underrepresented people seem to inspire PR agencies to pitch DEI stories to the media. In this business, it's almost always a story about a DEI-inspired biotech leader. Most of these pitches are garbage, and I realize they're garbage only because I've had a very small handful of conversations with biotech leaders who have actually been able to articulate on the value of DEI beyond the warm fuzzies elicited by an occasional female or minority C-suite hire. There's even a term for this garbage that I speak of. It's called diversity washing, a play on the term greenwashing, which was coined to characterize companies that spend more money marketing their brands as environmentally conscious than they spend actually reducing their carbon footprint. I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech, and I'm going to get off this soapbox now because Rami Elghandour, my guest on today's show, is not a diversity washer. In fact, his novel cell therapy company, Arcellx, is killing it right now. Its stock topped $73 in March. Analysts are saying its lead phase 2 multiple myeloma asset will likely best BMS and J&J's therapies. And Rami doesn't have to fabricate anything to draw a direct line from point A, his rabid commitment to growing a diverse team, to point B, a biotech that's defying market trends, outperforming its peers, and growing rapidly. On today's show, we're pulling back the covers on that success, getting to know Rami and learning how he's building a company that's not just a colorful mosaic of humanity, but fitted out with the best minds in the business. Rami, how is that for a setup?
Couldn't be better, Matt. I really appreciate the passion with which you attack the topic. Obviously, I think you know quite a bit about it, and I've dug into a variety of companies approaching in a variety of ways. But yeah, excited to have this conversation and really appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate it as well. I'm honored to have you as a guest, and your Arcellx, as I said, is doing great right now. So I'm interested in digging into that. And before we get into the meat of the DEI conversation and start attacking those lines that I mentioned, I want to get to know you a little bit and what brought you to the business, what kind of forms your leadership style. And it looked to me on paper, and it's often wrong on paper. There's nuance to the story that I don't get looking at a LinkedIn profile. But it looked like you got into life sciences venture capital, like pretty much right on the heels of earning your MBA at Wharton, after doing some undergrad and early work experience in electrical and computer engineering, of all things. So I'm curious. It makes me curious about those formative years. What incited or inspired the pivot to biotech, and how you kind of got started?
Yeah, sure. I always make that joke that it makes a lot of sense that I'm running a biotech company given my experience in education and electrical engineering. But I think as we talk and think about cell therapy, there's such an operational and sort of almost like an engineering mindset component to this field that it would surprise most people that there's actually a pretty high degree of alignment between the practical experience I've developed and certainly the experience here at Arcellx, which, as you very graciously highlighted, has been incredible. But the pivot to biotech for me was a little bit more nuanced, I guess. After I had a great run at another startup that I was able to grow from about 30 to 1,000 people and take public, and had a lot of success in. And after taking some time off, I really wanted to think about how I wanted to spend my life, and I decided I wanted to spend it on something that changes the world in the next decade. And certainly cell and gene therapies was at the top of that list. AI was also near the top of that list. But That's what brought me to Arcellx. I was really interested in oncology and cell therapies more specifically. I was approached about the opportunity. The company had developed an early proof of concept, but certainly had a lot more opportunity ahead of it. And it was a really great fit for me in terms of the stage of development, the space I wanted to be in, some folks that I've worked with previously and knew and trusted. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to ask you a follow-up on that because a lot of our listeners are aspirational biotech leaders, aspirational biotech founders, and I make comment, I make reference to this frequently. I'm very often asked by aspirational biotech leaders, especially young ones, perhaps people who are in their undergrad or post-grad work who are interested in the space, like what should I do? Should I go get an MBA? Should I start out at the bench in the lab? Should I, join big bio, get experience? Like what are the likely what are the likely career paths? And having interviewed hundreds and hundreds of biotech founders and CEOs, I tell them like all of it, one of them, all of them, any of them, like people come from every background or walk of life. But folks who perhaps have a degree in a related but different field, or maybe come from a different industry, might wonder what some of the keys are to breaking down any barriers, even perceived, to getting into this space. So I'm curious, in your experience, when you decided you wanted to do something meaningful and take advantage of the cell and gene therapy activity that was happening, and you said, okay, I want to go, get involved with a biotech. Were there any real or perceived barriers to this guy who has good entrepreneurial skills and a good business background, making it into specifically bio?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be honest, I didn't really find a lot of resistance or barriers. And when making that transition, what I actually found was the complete opposite. I found a lot of really open-minded folks that could see the translation of my prior experience and the value it could bring to the biotech space. And it wasn't just people that I had previously worked with, as in the case of Arcellx, but a lot of people I met throughout the kind of evaluation process that I hadn't known before, and were pretty excited about my background and what I brought to the table. And so I think that, to answer maybe your more specific question, like in terms of advice, I think, look, I had a mentor early on in my life tell me that at the end of the day, if you do real impactful and valuable work, the results, they may not show up immediately, but they show up over time. And I felt like the experiences I had gathered certainly played out that way when I wanted to make this transition. So I think the best advice I can give anyone is to focus on collecting great experiences. I think too often, like you said, people get caught up into some formulaic thing, like I need to work for a big company or small company. I need to work in this function or that function. And, the reality is that the world is always changing and opportunities are never the same from one moment to the other. So I think you just need to pick the best opportunities with the best people that will help you generate the best experiences. And if you do that enough time, I think it both is incredibly fulfilling, as I've certainly experienced in my career, but also can lead to great opportunities.
Yeah. You just mentioned that you had, some support and didn't meet a whole lot of resistance. Yet, you have told me in a separate conversation that so you joined Arcellx in 2021 as CEO, but you told me that some of your closest confidants at the time when you were making the decision advised you against taking that role. Share why.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a different question, Matt. For sure, people, I had I was fortunate to have a number of really attractive opportunities. And generally speaking, there was a couple of reasons people told me not to take this particular role. One, at that moment in time, there was a belief that from a technology perspective, that allogeneic CAR Ts would overtake autologous CAR Ts, which is where we play at Arcellx, is the autologous space. And so a lot of folks, particularly on the investing side and on the public buy side, felt that it wasn't a worthwhile investment of time because the runway wasn't super long. Secondarily, as it relates to the lead program here, which you alluded to has the potential to be best in class in myeloma, there was a belief that we were just too late to the party. There was too many other players that were too far ahead of us, and that wasn't a clear path to success. And it turns out I felt like that wasn't, I thought in both cases the advice was misguided for reasons that I won't spend a lot of time explaining now. But that was the secondary reason. I think the third reason was, while the stage of development, like I said, for me was right, there was a lot of risks with the company. The fundraising environment wasn't great. There was a lot of challenges within the company at that point in time in terms of turnover and things of that nature. So it was kind of compounding. It was like the space you were in, even though I saw it as attractive, some folks didn't see that. The opportunity that you were pursuing as the lead, a lot of people felt was challenged. Again, I didn't believe that. And then the third component was the company itself was going through some challenges. And so when you put a challenging company into a challenging, indication in a challenging space, that stacked up to a lot of no's. But I think that's why, we're in these positions, right? You have to make hard calls, and you have to have the vision to see through some of these challenges, and that there can be a big opportunity on the other side. And, I have to say, I'm fortunate that turned out to be right.
Well, your response begs the question: what did you see? I mean, beyond the challenge that probably, an entrepreneurial minded fellow like you thirsts for, right? Embraces, wants to take on. Beyond that, what did you see that you could wrap your arms around to take a company that was facing some challenges in a very competitive market and turn it into what you've helped it, turn into?
Yeah, so let's touch on those three buckets. So from a autologous versus allogeneic space, one of the actual advantages was coming from being kind of an outsider and not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid, because all I could do was look at the scientific evidence and the clinical data in front of me and make an unbiased evaluation. And the conclusion I came to in the autologous versus allogeneic debate was that I think autologous is going to win out. And I think that's proven now 3 years later. That's very clear as the case. Especially in these oncology indications. And so that was actually pretty clear to me. The BCMA one actually touches back on the question you asked earlier about my perceived background coming into biotech. Coming from a commercial background, I think I was able to see that the market opportunity was sufficiently large. Again, that some of these competitors weren't likely going to be as competitive as people thought. And there was enough of an opportunity for us at least to build a base case that we can build a meaningful business. Maybe at that time, and truthfully at that time, it would have been, presumptuous that you can get to best in class because we had only treated a handful of patients. But there was the ceiling of being best in class. That certainly wasn't taken off the table. But there was also a floor of like, look, we can make it to market, and we can take enough share to justify this as an investment. And in fact, arguably the first decision I made when I joined Arcellx was to reinvest and commit to the LEAP program, because that was a point of that was a significant point of debate. So I'd say those are primarily I think the things that I saw that were a little bit different. Certainly the operational things, while a challenge, and if you felt confident in the category and you felt confident in your position in that indication, you have to bet on yourself that you can manage the operational elements. I did feel really strongly that there was an incredible scientific core in the company. One of the things I say I'm most proud of is we've been able to retain all of those original scientists. We call them the Super Seven, to this day. And obviously minus the founder who's departed, but the other core group is still there and helping us drive towards new indications. And so that part, I think, if I wasn't confident in that part, I should find something else to do. I certainly was confident in the operational element, but I also got confident in the strategic elements, if you will.
Yeah, very good. Within 6 months of joining the company as CEO, I'm just going to rattle off a couple of the accomplishments that happened in those early months. You received an IND for Acellx 001, secured a Series C. 6 months after that, you closed your IPO. You already mentioned the fact that when you joined the company in 21, you said markets weren't great, which is like perhaps the understatement of the year. Markets were in a tailspin. You closed your IPO. Arcellx has been outperforming since then, as I noted in my rambling introduction. So tell us, I don't even know like how to form the question up in a concise way, but tell us, I guess, how those first 6-12 months and the actions that you and leadership took there to position the company have contributed to that outperformance that I mentioned.
Yeah, look, that's a great place to start. I would say that the actions fall into a couple of categories. There were certainly hard decisions that had to be made. Like you mentioned, one of them going public at that point in time. There were certainly enough folks that told me that was a really risky and dangerous thing to do given the state of the markets, but we were able to pull that off. There was an element of addressing the operational, challenges, and that really involved building a management team that can take the company to where it is today. And that a big element of that was diversity, as we'll get into. But I really fundamentally believe diversity is not just the right thing to do, but is a competitive advantage. And it's been foundational for me in the companies that I've been involved in. And certainly I would attribute to a large degree the success we've had to the incredibly diverse team that we were able to pull together here. So that was a big part of it too, and a big part of where we are today. And then the third one is execution. I mean, you can have the right kind of strategic vision and make hard decisions, and you can have the right people, but they say success is borrowed and the rent is due every day. You got to just keep delivering, and I think that's one of the things we're most proud of is in a difficult backdrop, incredibly difficult, as you've said. We've been able to do that now for 3 years, and I'm just going to keep the pedal down and keep it going.